nobody that
Hepili Vehena Ole, a relationship that cannot be undone. Kumukahi.org explains that the Aina or landscape contains Vahipana, which are places of historical or cultural importance. Places have stories. Sometimes the story explains why a place has a certain name. Other times it records an event that took place there.
Frances Reed retold one account of the story of Hilo, goddess name. In her book, Hilo Legends, in that story, the great King Kamehameha himself named Hilo. One day, the story goes, while camped near the mouth of Hilo's Wailuku River, the king decided to visit an old friend who lived nearby. Strong and powerful as he was, Kamehameha never feared venturing out on his own, and he gathered his servants and instructed them to stand guard over his canoe while he was gone. Then the king headed up the river to visit his friend. An hour passed, and then another, and then several more hours. The servants grew uneasy as their king had not yet returned. Was he ambushed and captured by one of his enemies? Perhaps he had fallen into a steep cavern formed by an ancient lava flow. As still more time passed without any sign of Kamehameha, his men feared for his safety. Still they dared not leave his canoe unattended. Suddenly, one of the men who was from Waipio shouted out, "I know what we can do. We can make a rope and tie the canoe so it cannot drift away." "Make a rope?" the others replied. "How and with what?" The servant grinned. "Here, I'll show you," he said. Gathering tea leaves, he formed 2 chains of leaves and began twisting each leaf. Then he twisted the 2 chains together, forming a sturdy cord-like rope. Such twisting, he told them, is called Hilo. After using the rope to secure the canoe, the servants set out to search for their king. They found him a short way up the river, returning to camp unharmed but more than a little disturbed. "Where's my canoe?" he bellowed. "You promised to stand watch over it. By now it may be drifted out to sea or perhaps stolen." But the servants explained to him how they had secured the canoe, and Kamehameha nodded his head in approval. "Tea ropes?" he roared. "No one in this area knows how to make ropes like that. Only people in Waipio know how to do that." "I am from Waipio," said the servant who had taught the others to fashion the ropes. "That is well and good," said the king. "From now on, this place shall be called Hilo."
Hilo is also well known for its rainy climate and its lehua blossoms. Hilo's famous rain is Ka'uakani Lehua. There are 3 parts of Hilo: Hilo Paliku, Hilo One, and Hilo Hanakahi. Hilo Paliku means Hilo of the Standing Cliffs and refers to the northern part of this moku, where the shore is mainly high rocky cliffs. Hilo One, or Sandy Hilo, is a stretch of black sand beach fronting the downtown area, Ho'ohanai, and Malama each other. On every 2nd and 4th Monday, we will be wearing our Hilo shirt to connect and inspire us to be our best. Please join us in representing Hilo with pride and the Viking spirit. E aloha ke kahi I ke kahi, e kulia I ka nu'u, a ohehana nui ke alu ia. Love one another, strive for the summit, no task is too big when done together by all.
Hi, my name is Tyler Shendon, and I'm standing here next to student parking to give you some student parking info. Please remember, student parking is limited to these 10 stalls on the top of campus along the Waianuenui Avenue fence line. Parking on campus is a privilege. Students may park in the stalls on a first-come, first-served basis, only after completing a parking application at the main office. All other stalls on campus are assigned. Students who park in an unauthorized stall will be cited. Some important reminders. Parking on Waianui Avenue is permitted only after 8 a.m. Hawaii Police Department officers have been issuing citations for vehicles parked prior to 8 a.m. Students should not use their vehicles on or off campus as lockers. Student vehicles are off limits during school days. As part of the student parking application process, applications will need to submit valid vehicle registration certificate, proof of vehicle insurance, Hawaii driver's license, and proof of safety certificate. Updated documents will be required as file expire. Hilo High students are not allowed to utilize parking on the Hilo Intermediate School parking lot. These reminders will also be posted on the Hilo High website.
My name is Mr. Turnbull, one of the vice principals here at Hilo High School. I want to talk to you today about the use of cell phones while on campus. Cell phone use is a privilege while on campus and should never be used in class without the teacher's specific permission under the Tech Zone's rules. Unauthorized cell phone use will result in confiscation of the cell phone and a phone call home. Multiple offenses will result in the need for parental pickup of the cell phone and even not being able to retrieve your phone until the end of the school year. Please remember that cell phone use is not permitted during bathroom trips or any time a student is outside of class. Security will be watching. At Hilo High School, we strive to teach our students how to become ethical and effective users of technology, which is why we allow the limited use of cell phones during lunch and recess. With that in mind, please understand that cell phone use is a privilege and may be revoked at any time if used irresponsibly. Thank you, and have a great Thursday.
Aloha, I am Vice Principal Pana, and I will be working with each of you this coming school year. I would like to welcome the freshmen to our Viking Ohana, and to our sophomores, juniors, and seniors, welcome back. I hope you had a great summer, and now you are ready to rock in the classroom. Your attendance to school and each of your classes is very important to your success here at Hilo High School. With that said, I would like to remind everyone that you are expected to be on campus from the time you arrive in the morning until the end of the normal school day. If you need to leave campus for a valid and verifiable reason during the school day, a parent or guardian must provide a campus absence written excuse to the office before you leave. This is for any student regardless of age, even if you are 18, which is a new rule this school year. Our hope is for each and every one of you to have a safe and successful school year. And remember, once a Viking, always a Viking. See you around campus.
Aloha, this is Karen Welsh, your Title I Parent Involver here at Hilo High, and I'm so glad to present Principal Robert Dirks doing one of his quarterly talk stories so that he can let everyone in the school, all the parents and guardians, administrators, and whoever else wants to watch on Facebook Live or later on in the course of time, what's going on and some important questions that need to be answered. So without further delay, thank you, Principal Dirks, for being here. We welcome you, and we look forward to this time together.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity that I have to be here in front of individuals who I'm not sure is out there, but I do know that there are a few of us that are watching Facebook at this time. First of all, we've evolved. This began, Karen and my journey began years ago, maybe 8, 9 years ago, maybe longer, where her hands are up about 10 years, that we've done what they call a quarterly principal coffee hour. And we would meet in a little room up behind the cafeteria for about an hour with parents who are interested in knowing what's going on at Hilo High School, where I would field questions. So we've evolved because now we've gone from a much smaller little audience, if you will, to a much larger one in accordance to our new technology efforts here at Hilo High School. And I think that's remarkable, that I'm able to talk to more people than we did in the past. So as a result, I'm able to address more issues that come up that were not really presented back in the days when we were just in front of a small group of people. So with that, I'd like to just acknowledge a few individuals before I begin the state of the campus to all of you. But I'd like to acknowledge first Ms. Karen Welsh, our parent involver and Title I involver, for her efforts over the years, sticking with me, and more importantly, being able to coordinate these activities. She's got a good connectivity to the community, and we appreciate that. I'd also like to recognize and thank our tech people, more specifically Luke Eclipse Ujano, who is I would say, our main tech face here on the campus. He's got us hooked up to a lot of different platforms, if you will, to communicate to the public. Just to name a few, Of course, we have our website that all of you are able to connect to. That's www.hilohshighschool.k12.ha.us. It's a great website. It's got a lot of links to other things as well as our foundation in the Hilo community. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Google+, YouTube, and Vimeo. That's quite a bit of efforts that are out there to communicate to the families, the community, and more importantly to the parents of our children here at Hilo High School. First of all, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the state of the campus, which is normally what I would do. I'd start off with all our meetings. First of all, our population, it's growing. For those of you who are graduates that let's say in the 80s, 90s, we were kind of big. We were about 2,400 people, our students. We've dropped down. We've dropped down to around 1,500, 1,400 over the years. A lot has to do with the building of Waiakea High School, Keao High School, and then our private schools like Kamehameha and our charter schools. So you have an option. You have choices that you can make if you choose to have your child go to any particular school. The projected amount of students for this school year, which is the 17-18 school year, was to be 1,099. 1,000 students are quite a bit, but nevertheless, it is a number that we're not used to seeing. It's a low number. But as of right now, in checking with my registrar, we have 1,136 students. And students are still coming in and out. We'll gain 2, lose 1, gain 3, lose 2. And this is still going on as we speak. So students are still trying to situate themselves well into the first quarter, but that's to be expected. We have a lot of transient students that come in and out. Some of the things that you may want to know is that we have a full group of teachers that are teaching your children at this time, but there were about 4 positions that we were not able to fill as we speak. I have a business line that I was not able to fill, metals, which is part of career technical education, and 2 special education lines, both for English and social studies. We have long-term subs that we believe, substitutes, which we believe are fully capable of holding the classroom to that level of understanding, but we're still actively working with our personnel department to see if we can still, or at this point, get qualified teachers, licensed teachers in to take over those 4 classes. But in the meantime, we're confident in those substitutes that have stepped up. Just so you know, we have, we're at the mid-quarter right now. And the mid-quarter means that we're not quite at the end of the first quarter, but getting close. I believe it's going to be in October. October 23rd, I think, is the end of the first quarter. And at that point, report cards will be sent out through our STARS period. And then you'll be getting report cards. And again, it's about October 23rd. Right now, we have approximately, well, it's not approximately, we have a number of students that are not doing as well, but you should have that information in front of you if you're assuming your child has brought home the announcements. We also have, through technology, what they call Infinite Campus, which is a computer-based program that gives you an update as to how your children are doing in any given subject with updates. And so I encourage you, if you haven't already started, to enter the Infinite Campus website to look at how things are going in your child's particular interest and be informed. If you have further questions, of course, the counselors for your child are available. With that being said, we have counselors, 5 counselors that are on board that are alpha generated, so it's all by alphabet. It's because we have families that have 2 or 3 children in the school, and it's a lot easier that way. We had to make some adjustments, so there are really 4 counselors that are actively involved with counseling your children, and the 5th counselor is being utilized for testing and assessments. So that's just for your information. We have a number of construction projects going on right now on campus. The biggest one, I think, is in the rear of the campus in the back parking lot and along the road of the track. they're installing new lights, and that's a plus because it gets kind of dark on campus in the evening. And we have athletes and some students and teachers that remain on campus after normal working hours that get, and they could become subject to dark areas, and we didn't want that to occur. So we're installing new lights, and they're almost complete. I was told that by the end of probably early October, mid-October, they should be just about all complete where we can resume our normal parking. Right now, I've asked many of our teachers and staff to sacrifice their stalls in the back of the campus and move forward, hence the limited amount of parking stalls for our students that have applied. We have taken as many of the parking stall application requests from our students that are driving, and we have them on file. We're just waiting for the dust to sort of settle in the back of the campus. Some more updates I'd like to share with you is, as you know, we have a school community council, and it's made up of constituencies or individuals that represent the various entities of the school. You have the teacher component, you have the classified staff like your custodial that are represented, you have parents, you have community, and we meet faithfully on the first Monday of every month, and we are led very gallantly and with a lot of direction from Lucy Ramirez, who is a student here, a member of the student council, but has taken on the role of leader. And I think all high schools should be at that level of agreement that we need to empower our students, those especially that will step up so that they're given the opportunity to take these leadership roles. And eventually they do move on to bigger and better things as they leave the high school arena. Just so you know, if I could share this with you, last year is the class of 2017. We had a number of students that took leadership roles from the onset, and they ended up moving on to further their education at various institutions like Princeton, Stanford University. We had one student that was accepted to the West Point, the military academy. And just recently on the news, one of our students was highlighted as part of the Fashion Institute Technology Foundation in New York City. His name is Jai Leong. He was spotlighted. He looks great. Looks a little older, but he just graduated, and he was a big part of the Mauna Ola fashion design efforts in New York City. So our students are venturing out, and they are being recognized for their leadership efforts while they were at Hilo High School. And when we acknowledge our graduates, we wish them the best, and we always push forward for students that are coming up at Hilo High School. One thing I was asked to talk a little bit about, and this is part of our updates, is our 9th grade teams. This is relatively new here at Hilo High School. I believe this is our 2nd year. But what we do is we focus on our 9th graders as they come in from the various feeder schools, as well as from other areas in the state and maybe even from the mainland. We feel the 9th graders need to have a little bit more support in terms of processes and procedures and things along that lines. And so as a result, we have these 9th grade teams that have a specific administrator assigned to them. We have a counselor, a specific counselor that's assigned to them, and teachers that are dedicated to the teaching of the 9th grade curriculum, whichever that might be, in the content areas, math, social studies, language arts, science, and other electives as well. And they meet throughout the week to discuss the students and how best to work with the 9th graders. It's a little too early to tell how successful that is, but we do know that a number of our students complete from last year, their 9th grade year, and moved on to sophomores, and they feel that they've received a good support, if you will, as they move into the high school arena in their sophomore year. So our 9th grade class is doing well. I'm going to do a little advertisement here. The teams are no longer teams. They are now considered communities, which falls along the lines of the Hawaiian culture. And they now all will be wearing shirts that look like this. I don't mean to block my face, but I will. So all the 9th graders and the staff members all are wearing shirts that look like this. And I think this makes them stand out. As a matter of fact, The picture that's on here is of the latest project that they're working on in terms of fish ponds down in Keaukaha. And they seem to be very receptive to this effort. And I think this is good when we can have our ninth graders connect to the community of Hilo. So I applaud the staff members that are overseeing this, and I am anxious to see our ninth graders moving forward. One last thing, you probably saw in this morning's paper what they call the benchmarks, if you will, for all schools in the state of Hawaii. It's called Strive High. If you didn't see it, it's in the paper. You can go to the state website to identify this. But specifically to Hilo High School, we have made a number of improvements in a lot of areas. You'll notice that when you look at it, but on our measurement of math, science, and language arts, we have made pretty much strides, far from perfection, but we've made strides, and I think that's what's important. It improves what we do, it informs instruction, and we move forward. So as we speak, our teachers are meeting today, as a matter of fact, to discuss specifically the Strive High results so that we can improve our assessments, our test scores, and a few other things like our attendance and a number of other issues that affect most high schools in the state. That's my update. So what I'd like to do at this time is turn the moderation over to Karen, so that there are some questions that you have developed that hopefully I can answer. Before I do that, I have to first of all say and qualify that not all the questions will be addressed, only because some of them are of a personal nature, and I would rather speak with the parent of those questions so that I can first of all find out a little bit more what your concern is, and then be able to address it that way. But there are a number of questions that I can't answer today. So Karen, go ahead and start.
Thank you, Principal Dirks. I think what we'll do now is take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back with a list of questions. Mahalo.
He pili vehena ole, a relationship that cannot be undone. Kumukahi.org explains that the aina, or landscape, contains vahipana, which are places of historical or cultural importance. Places have stories. Sometimes the story explains why a place has a certain name. Other times it records an event that took place there.
Frances Reed retold one account of the story of Hilo got his name. In her book, Hilo Legends, in that story, the great King Kamehameha himself named Hilo. One day, the story goes, while camped near the mouth of Hilo's Wailuku River, the king decided to visit an old friend who lived nearby. Strong and powerful as he was, Kamehameha never feared venturing out on his own, and he gathered his servants and instructed them to stand guard over his canoe while he was gone. Then the king headed up the river to visit his friend. An hour passed, and then another, and then several more hours. The servants grew uneasy as their king had not yet returned. Was he ambushed and captured by one of his enemies? Perhaps he had fallen into a steep cavern formed by an ancient lava flow. As still more time passed without any sign of Kamehameha, his men feared for his safety. Still they dared not leave his canoe unattended. Suddenly, one of the men who was from Waipio shouted out, "I know what we can do. We can make a rope and tie the canoe so it cannot drift away." "Make a rope?" the others replied. "How and with what?" The servant grinned. "Here, I'll show you," he said. Gathering tea leaves, he formed 2 chains of leaves and began twisting each leaf. Then he twisted the 2 chains together, forming a sturdy cord-like rope. Such twisting, he told them, is called Hilo. After using the rope to secure the canoe, the servants set out to search for their king. They found him a short way up the river, returning to camp unharmed but more than a little disturbed. "Where's my canoe?" he bellowed. "You promised to stand watch over it. By now it may be drifted out to sea or perhaps stolen." But the servants explained to him how they had secured the canoe, and Kamehameha nodded his head in approval. "Tea ropes?" he roared. "No one in this area knows how to make ropes like that. Only people in Waipio know how to do that." "I am from Waipio," said the servant who had taught the others to fashion the ropes. "That is well and good," said the king. "From now on, this place shall be called Hilo."
Hilo is also well known for its rainy climate and its lehua blossoms. Hilo's famous rain is Ka'uakani Lehua. There are 3 parts of Hilo: Hilo Paliku, Hilo One, and Hilo Hanakahi. Hilo Paliku means Hilo of the Standing Cliffs and refers to the northern part of this moku, where the shore is mainly high rocky cliffs. Hilo One, or Sandy Hilo, is a stretch of black sand beach fronting the downtown area, Ho'ohanai, and Malama each other. On every second and fourth Monday, we will be wearing our Hilo shirt to connect and inspire us to be our best. Please join us in representing Hilo with pride and the Viking spirit. E aloha ke kahi I ke kahi, e kulia I ka nu'u, a ohehana nui ke alu ia. Love one another, strive for the summit, no task is too big when done together by all.
Welcome back to the Principal's Talk Story with Hilo High School Principal Robert Dirks. In this section, we're going to be fielding some questions that were sent in by parents and guardians. And again, I want to reiterate what Principal Robert Dirks said, is that we will try to get to as many questions as we can. Some questions will have to be answered privately, which will be taken care of after this session is over. So I want to welcome you back. And Principal Robert Dirks, are you ready for the questions?
I will give it my best shot, yes.
Is there a dress code, and is it enforced?
Is there a dress code, and is it enforced? Yes, Hilo High School does have a dress code. It's been that way for a number of years since I've been here anyway, and it's a school to work type of a mindset where when you go to work, how would you dress? And I know that's a big open bubble there, only because many people dress differently. But we do have a dress code, and if I can, I'd like to recommend that for parents to review the handbook that has been given to all parents at the start of the school year, because a majority of the questions that have been asked of me for this particular session today are in the handbook. It even comes with pictures, so the students are aware of what is appropriate, and the parents, hopefully, if they've read this, will understand what is acceptable as well. I know the question of being enforceable always comes up, and unfortunately, if I was able to ensure that my child was dressed appropriately before they came to school, it would help alleviate a lot of the concerns once school's in session and students are going from class to class. But I understand there's a lot of parents that don't have the ability to check their child before they leave their home to determine if it's appropriate and in accordance with the handbook. Enforceability is available. Normally it'll be a warning to the child. We'll tell them, you know, that's inappropriate. We explain to them why. We refer back to the handbook. And then a call, hopefully, to the home will take place. And I say hopefully because sometimes numbers change or parents don't respond to the phone calls, but we follow up with a phone call. Anything that follows that first warning will get notated down for disciplinary requirements. And it can come from anything from in-school suspension to out-of-school suspension. But counselors are normally involved in most cases to discuss with the child the importance of dressing appropriately for school.
To follow up on that, several parents have asked if uniforms will take effect soon.
Uniforms. Well, uniforms are not new because a lot of schools, especially the elementary schools, are using uniforms, and more so our private schools. Uniforms are definitely a good means to ensure consistency and uniformity across the board for all students, and for that matter, faculty members. Originally, if I may share a little bit, originally uniforms were a necessary part of recognizing, especially in the mainland, students that don't belong on campus. It was a means of saying you don't fit in because you're not wearing the appropriate shirt or the appropriate hat or whatever the case might be. Over the years, since I've been here at Hilo High School, It will come up occasionally by a parent or a staff member or a student that wants to know, can we look at uniforms? Because there are other campuses that do use it. Uniforms like Keao High School, I believe they use a t-shirt. With that being said, we have made efforts to solicit information or feedback from students, from parents, through faculty members as well, through surveys. As long as I've been here, we've had at least 3 opportunities to solicit some sort of feedback, and the response has been not in favor of uniforms, but controlling what is being worn, and I think that was the initial question about enforcement. I will, because it's come up again, I will reinstitute a survey to determine if it is something that parents, students, and faculty members would like. I might also add that Keao High School does have a uniform, which is a t-shirt, but Waiakea doesn't. Kealakehi High School doesn't. Konawaina High School doesn't. Ka'u High School doesn't. So there are as many schools, if not more, that don't institute a uniform policy as they are that do. Excuse me, Pohoa does have t-shirts that they wear. So Pohoa and Keao are the 2 high schools, public high schools, that I am aware of. So I will go ahead and reinstitute the question, and it'll probably come to all of you through a survey and as well as to the students, so that we can get a gauge of what exactly the feeling is amongst the community.
Thank you so much. The next question is, who are the persons at school who have received training to respond to a student's complaint of sexual, emotional, or physical abuse by a teacher or school staff member?
You know, that's an interesting question, only because we have a number of individuals by their qualifications as counselors, as school-based therapists, as well as our teachers who have been trained in that particular thought in terms of responding to students with complaints. I might also add that the complaints aren't only against students and staff members, but some of them come from the home as well. So we have counseling department members that are qualified to take those questions or those concerns and to address them with the child. I want to make it very clear in the majority of the questions that came up that a lot has to do with reporting. There are cases where students, either for personal fear or not knowing the process, will not share with anybody their concerns. They may bring it home and then it becomes an issue with the parent. But we need to know firsthand and right in front that there are concerns that a student may have. So by all means, I ask that students should feel comfortable and encouraged by their parent to bring these kinds of concerns to the school, and we have the individuals that are available to help them.
Why does the schedule alternate short and long days on certain days? Can the school stick to one schedule to make it easier for parents when picking up their kids?
We've come a long way from those days where everybody gets out at the same time, and I'm saying that in a way that's politically correct. The whole issue here is that we are mandated by state law to offer 180 days of instruction to all students. If you've ever looked at a DOE calendar, you'll see that in the left column, and that's on the DOE website, that has a number of days listed for each week, each month, each quarter, and then at the bottom a total. So we're mandated to offer 180 days of instruction to students. How we develop those 180 days and factor them into a bell schedule is left up to the individual schools. And I'm speaking mainly about the high schools, because there's a number of other things that we have to consider. For example, clubs where they meet, various other activities that require flexibility in the bell schedule. But at Hilo High School, since the question was asked, we recognize that it's not just the students that need to discuss issues and concerns, but also the teachers. So we develop bell schedules. I think you know it here at Hilo High as even and odd schedules, so that there are opportunities for the teachers to meet at the end of the school day and be able to discuss and further move on the issues and concerns of the classes of the students. So there is flexibility. We do have even and odd days, but it all meets the criteria of the state of Hawaii for 180 school days, and also meets the criteria of HSTA's contract for teacher opportunities to meet in their meeting times and efforts.
Thank you. How is it possible that a high school biology class can be held entirely in a classroom that is not even close to any kind of standard biology lab type classroom, that does not have any microscopes or basic lab equipment?
I brought this to the attention of our department head for the science department, and it was made known to me, which I knew, but I wanted it confirmed, that every science class has technology available to them, more specifically microscopes. The amount of use or when they become available to students or accessible will depend on where they are in terms of the lesson itself. Normally, and I'm looking at the basic biology, it's usually in the second quarter that they are exposed and can access microscopes. There's a process that leads up to it, and then they're taught how to use them appropriately. All classes do have the technology, and the question I think was about specifically microscopes. Microscopes are available, and the science department will discuss times where they can be utilized by one group and then the next group, so that it's equitable across the board for all that need it or want access to it. So they are available, and it just may not be as quickly as perhaps you would like to have that done. But yeah, that's the answer to that question.
Thank you. How do you control bullying, and what happens when it is repeatedly being done by students?
Excuse me. Bullying is something that is not appropriate. I can recall back in my younger days that we had, excuse me, the so-called bullies. But bullying is not an acceptable practice, and it does have an impact on a lot of our youth, as well as some of our adults as well. I think the first and more important thing is that of controlling bullying, it has to be reported, first and foremost. A lot of students don't report it for whatever reason. And unless we know that it exists, we are not aware of the condition. If we see it occurring, we will address it as we see it. But a lot of times, it's done within the privacy of the students, excuse me, the students' locations, whether it be in classrooms or, excuse me, in hallways. Normally, we won't know unless it's reported. The second thing is they need to share that information with their parents, because parents will normally get involved always after the fact. If a child, and this is only a suggestion that was made by the counseling, if a child is beginning to feel harassed or bullied, they need to let the parent know. Excuse me. And if it's not known by the parent, it may not ever get known by the administration or counseling. So reporting is the very first part, and that's about the control. Now, the other question that I'd like to address is, what's the consequence for bullying, excuse me, of students that are bullying? First of all, it has to be determined that it is something that did occur. And it's not that it didn't, it's just that we have to make sure, because there's many factors involved, many individuals that are involved with this particular evolution. So we have to determine that it did occur, and then the next thing we need to do is investigate as quickly as possible so we can address it. What are the consequences? Well, we operate on the premise that everything falls in the line of Chapter 19. Chapter 19 is misconduct by students and what the schools or the DOE's response to those things would be. And so as a result, there are many factors we look at before we initiate any kind of consequence. First of all, we look at the age of the offender. We look at whether they're a repeat offender or not. We look at what kind of an impact it has on others. We look at the severity of the offense. Once we determine the what, the who, and the how, then what we do is we assign whatever is appropriate for that particular student. Is counseling the first initial response? It may be. Is it in-school suspension? It may be. Is it suspension? It very well could be as well. There is a process that we follow, but I think the key behind it is, again, determining what led to that particular identification of bullying and what we can do to stop it. A lot of times, students aren't aware of what they do. And once you bring it to their attention, they become more aware of it. And then it's easier, if you will, to be able to get them to understand that it's inappropriate. So in terms of the controlling and in terms of the consequences, this is how we operate. Again, I ask that students report it. Parents, we need to make sure that you are aware of the condition and encourage your child to report it as well, especially if it's not being known to anybody on the school staff.
Thank you, Principal Dirks. We're going to take a short commercial break and be back with the rest of the questions. Aloha.
Hi, my name is Sal Shandin, and I'm standing here next to student parking to give you some student parking info. Please remember, student parking is limited to these 10 stalls on the top of campus along the Waianui Avenue fence line. Parking on campus is a privilege. Students may park in the stalls on a first-come, first-served basis, only after completing a parking application at the main office. All other stalls on campus are assigned. Students who park in an unauthorized stall will be cited. Some important reminders. Parking on Waianui Avenue is permitted only after 8 a.m. Hawaii Police Department officers have been issuing citations for vehicles parked prior to 8 a.m. Students should not use their vehicles on or off campus as lockers. Student vehicles are off limits during school days. As part of the student parking application process, applications will need to submit valid vehicle registration certificate, proof of vehicle insurance, Hawaii driver's license, and proof of safety certificate. Updated documents will be required as file expire. Hilo High students are not allowed to utilize parking on the Hilo Intermediate School parking lot. These reminders will also be posted on the Hilo High website.
Aloha and welcome back to our first quarter talk story hour with Hilo High School Principal Robert Dirks. We have a few more questions to ask, well, maybe a bit more than a few, but we're going to go ahead and spend the next 20 minutes answering those questions, and then it will be the end of this session. So Principal Dirks, you talked about bullying and the consequences of bullying. So how is a student that is bullied or harassed, how is it ensured that they are safe on campus?
The safety of a child on our campus is first and foremost. We want to ensure that the child is safe and feels safe. Sometimes bullying can be very traumatic for a child, and so as a result, it'll require some form of counseling by our staff to ensure that whatever the repercussions of the bullying that occurred is addressed and mainly faced with, because sometimes we hide things. We tend not to want to share any more than we have to. What I'd like to do is kind of carry over on the consequence side of it in terms of what we would normally do in most cases. Again, we talked about, we looked at the age, the repeat offender, we look at what of an impact it has, and if it's, is it something that can be addressed through counseling. If not, then we go through a process. Usually on the first offense, we definitely look at the counseling side of it. If it's severe enough, we'll go right to the in-school suspension or suspension. In most cases, police will not be notified unless the parent so advises. The parent does have a right to contact the police and file charges. The charges would not be initiated by the school, but it would be initiated by the parent. But there is a process that we use. Counseling is a big part of it, and just until the child is able to have that trauma, if you will, subside over time, it will have an effect, but we try to continually encourage the student to continue to come in, speak with the counselor. If they feel that it's not over or it's continuing, to let us know, especially administration, then we can deal with the bully themselves and pursue other avenues along the lines of consequence. So I believe that answers the question. Again, everything is dependent on who the child is, who meaning what the impact is, and also are the repeat offender and a number of other things. And then a decision will be made rather rapidly as well when it deals with that type of review.
Thank you. One parent has asked if there is someone in the school tutoring for math and English, and if so, when and where.
Excellent question. This year we have hired individuals to come in to tutor every day, except Wednesdays. So we have tutoring that goes on from the end of school to 3:45 every day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And that'll be in actually this room, C117. So C117, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, end of school day to 3:45, tutoring in math, science, language arts, and basically whatever that student would need support in.
That is awesome. Why do you wait until the last minute to let students know if they are going to graduate or not? Why allow them to participate in class activities until the last moment if they are ineligible to get a diploma?
You know, a lot of times it isn't in the last moment. We already have an understanding of the student's background, habits, abilities, and I guess you could also say the factors that address whether or not they will be able to graduate. Counselors, senior counselors normally know from the beginning of the year what students are having difficulties, and will begin to address it at the beginning of the year. I've sat in many a meeting in the second semester, usually around the third quarter, where we constantly bring in the student and the parents to offer assistance in any way we can, so that they will be able to see some success and actually feel the ability that they can graduate on time when it arrives. However, we do have students that will not be able to hit those marks, and that would be up to days before graduation. Everything is done as much as possible to help these students, but there are factors involved that we may or may not be aware of now that do impact the student's inability to hit those targets. But we do start early on in the senior year in order to ensure that all students are given the look, if you will, and the understanding of where they're at.
I'm going to ask you two questions at once again.
Okay.
Can you implement more family connection opportunities, and could there possibly be parent workshops that could help a parent of a teenager carry out educational goals?
Well, what I'd like to do is return this question back to our parent involver, Ms. Welsh, who can probably share with you some ideas that she has. So, Karen.
Yes, in the past and in the present, we have always provided family connection opportunities, and we have held workshops for parents to help their students sort out their educational goals, mainly concerning the athletics, a student athlete who might want to go on and become a college athlete, or just with their goals in filling out college forms and figuring out where they might want to go to school afterwards, and different things like that. Usually that's done through the PTSA, requests are made by parents and guardians to the PTSA, and the PTSA will actually go ahead and host a workshop or a meeting addressing these issues that parents would like to talk about. Often they bring in experts in the area to talk and to give out that information. So number one, we have a very active PTSA here at Hilo High School. Beverly Heikes is the president, and you can always contact her. You can contact me for her email address. You can also write questions for me to give to her. Another way that we can see if there's a large interest in this sort of activity is to do a survey. And so parents, I may be sending you another survey along the way asking if there's any areas or issues that you would like dealt with in a workshop type environment. We're always happy to provide these kind of things. It's just based on the interest of the parents and guardians at the school, because we would like to have attendance at the school for these sessions if we do provide them. So you will be hearing back from me on this, on these two questions.
Thank you, Karen. I too speak highly and refer to Ms. Welsh and Ms. Heikes, our PTSA president, for that reach, the outreach to the community. This is not part of the questions, but I'm going to throw this in real quick. One of the big issues that I'm seeing occurring here at the school, and I think it's like that across the nation, and also in the state here in the state of Hawaii, is social media. We use it positively for the things that we need it for example, this venue, Facebook, getting it out to all of you, some of the concerns that you may have, but it can also be used in an inappropriate way. A number of issues that have occurred here at the campus have been a result of social media connections that are made outside of the school and have been brought onto the campus. Maybe this could be one type of workshop that we could do, is bring in individuals that can help parents with understanding what their child is doing with their smartphones that may be considered inappropriate in most circles, but help the parents figure out ways that they can help the schools, more specifically, in identifying what supports can be provided to students so that they don't feel that social media can be, actually it can be used as a bullying tactic as well. I think that's what's really being used now. But that could be one example of a workshop that we would have, and I would assume most parents would probably be willing to come to a workshop like that. So that's something to think about, Karen. I'm just throwing that out there. Anyway,
thank you.
Please.
That's a great idea. We have done that in the past, and it is good to continue on and do those in the near future. So I have another question for you. How would you motivate or encourage a student to want to go to school, plus succeed and excel when he or she has or feels alone?
You know, a lot of times students will not be readily open to their fear, their anxieties, or their apprehension to want to talk about what they're feeling or experiences that they have. In discussing this with the counseling department, we all agreed that, again, the recognition of this is important. A lot of times we may not recognize it here at the school, but maybe through the home environment, it can be encouraged that their child come and see a counselor. We have more than qualified individuals to actually sit down with the child and discuss things in terms of success, lack of success, or a competition as it relates to succeeding in an environment of teenagers. One of the things they talked about is that there are comfort zones here on this campus that can be utilized. It could be a classroom, it could be a resource center in Building A, it could be a counselor's office. Safe zones meaning that students can feel reassured that when they enter, they'll be able to get questions answered or have that feeling of safety in terms of being able to express ideas and thoughts that they really don't want to share with others. Sometimes just being with a smaller group and not in a large patio setting is enough that will help children work out their concerns and differences. So the point I'm trying to make here is encourage your child, if they have concerns, to bring it to our counseling department so that they can go ahead and help them work through these things.
Another parent asked a similar question, saying, how can we as parents, educators, encourage students who do not feel open to discussing any negative issues or roadblocks within his or her personal or school life?
Well, you know, teenagers more specifically have a really difficult time controlling that fear that builds up over time when they are up against so many things. This is a very special generation of children because they've got so many influences out there that make it hard for them to address it on their own. A lot of times, for example, when we do mediations with students, it's not that they're incapable of having a conversation with another student to resolve issues, but they don't have the skills to help them resolve the issue. So a third party is always necessary, and that be in the form of an administrator or a counselor. But in answer to the question, I would say that the initial thing that a parent should do is make it known to your child that you do care, that you are listening, and that you do as much as you can to help them get through the particular condition. Listen to what they have to say and offer the help. And more importantly, indicate that their best interests will always be in their mind, not to solve the problem for them, but to help them as they prepare for adulthood to solve the problem for themselves with your guidance and direction. Again, if that's not possible, encourage them to come and speak with an adult here at the school.
I have a question that I meant to ask earlier about the Hero Points system and how it encourages or discourages students from being absent or late, and what do you do in such cases where a student doesn't care about Hero Points?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think what's interesting about it is that the Hero Points system was developed as a positive approach to student behavior. A lot of times students, your children in general, will always be told what they're doing wrong, never what they're doing right. So if they come to school on time, you recognize them. If they work with others appropriately, you acknowledge them, you recognize them. I think even some adults appreciate those kinds of strokes, if you will. We're instituting here at the school the Hero program, where we recognize you doing good things and we give you points for that. Points are in the form of their IDs. There are barcodes where we scan them. If we see an activity or an action going on that acknowledges their ability of doing correctly. It's a positive approach, not a negative. You know, they always get that, but it's a positive. I don't know if you can see this, but we're working on this thing called the Viking poster. And I know it's a lot, but it's in the back of your handbook. So if you have your handbook available, it's towards the last page, where it shows what we're asking students to be able to be recognized for and do positive things, both in the classroom, in common areas, and in the commuting and movement off the campus when traveling. And we're doing it over a period of time, but it's in the venue of pride in Vikings. So it would be things like, and I have to see this, but respect from the letter R, it's integrity with the letter I, it's T for determination, excuse me, D for determination, and E for excellence. So over a period of this year, we're going to be acknowledging the positives that students are being caught doing and getting points for them. Getting back to the negatives, there really isn't too much negatives, except that some students aren't acknowledged for doing well, and so they're not used to it. So we have to keep encouraging them, like something simple as wearing your name tag. I see you have your name tag today. Let me scan you with a positive point. So these are the kinds of things that we're trying to do with the Hero program.
That sounds awesome. I just want to make a comment because you've mentioned the parent handbook several times. students were supposed to bring those home, and they're supposed to be read, and then a note signed that it was read. And those notes still need to come back to the school if they haven't done so. So please read the parent handbook. It's wonderful. It's full of so much amazing information. And a lot of those questions will certainly be answered if it's read. So thank you, Principal Dirks, for continuing to bring that to the forefront. So another question I want to ask you is, how do adult educators encourage or instill good morals and values within students?
Being role models. I think that as I talk with the staff and as I speak with the faculty in general, I always say that it's important for them to be good role models. It isn't as difficult as one might imagine, but sometimes it may not come across. It might be in a fit of being upset about something, you show a side of yourself that you aren't proud of. But as a general rule, it's being role models. But with that being said, I think that parents would be the first line of education, if you will, or acknowledgement by the role model that they set. Students will essentially feel that this is a correct type of their demeanor, if you will, or their presentation, or how they would relate to an individual or things that occur. In answer to the question, I'd have to say is being a role model, but it's not just with our faculty, it's also at the home situation.
I think you might have answered this, but I'm going to ask, another parent asked, why is there a different end time for each day of the week?
Okay. Yes, I think I answered that earlier. It's really to allow for teachers to meet, I think twice a week they meet as opposed to the entire 5 days. We have to have the 180 days. We try to meld them in so you have your odd days, which are your 1, 3, 5, 7, and then you have your even days 2, 4, 6, which is usually Mondays and Wednesdays, and occasional Fridays. That's the time when they get out early that teachers can meet to discuss the activities of the day and prepare for the week or thereafter. So that's the reason why it's imbalanced, or it seems imbalanced.
I have time for one more question, and this has to do with Wi-Fi. Can you please address the issue of Wi-Fi internet access for students on campus, and can we include Wi-Fi in the new Hilo High School gymnasium?
Okay, 2 questions. First of all, Wi-Fi is very sought after anywhere you go. As we know as users, you know, people in the community as well as schools, Wi-Fi is something that will take us to the next level. It'll open up doors for us, the information highway, but it's necessary in order for us to be able to understand or acknowledge. First of all, let me explain that in the DOE complexes, whatever schools that you're at, more specifically Hilo High School, we do have little hubs, if you will, that emit the signals for Wi-Fi, but what individuals or people don't know is that the Wi-Fi itself is maintained by the Department of Education. They're very clear about use. For personal, and I know that one of the concerns is that we understand that things like Facebook inappropriately used or whatever else that we're using it inappropriately tends to utilize more Wi-Fi that's available for students that are using it for the reason of education or for academia. So what we've done here at Hilo High School is that we have what they call tech zones that are identified for teachers to utilize, whether they be through their Chromebooks, which are these devices, or they're laptops really what they are, but there's a number of them where teachers will allow students to access them that has Wi-Fi access. And that would be school related. A lot of times students would prefer to use their cell phone or utilize their iPad. The problem with that is that it can be used for other reasons as well, and we're sort of guided and directed by the DOE not to use personal devices for access to state-owned Wi-Fi control, or networking. So that's the reason. Now the new gym, We need to look a little closer as to how we can get that down there. I was under the impression it was, because this was a question, I think, concerning athletes who stay after school, are waiting for a particular game and or practice, and they'd like to do their homework. So we'll look into that to see if it's a possibility. But again, it all boils down to that it's used appropriately. And so we'll have to determine how that can be used. There might have to be a control issue down there at the new gym.
Thank you so much, Principal Dirks. We really appreciate your time in answering all of these questions so thoughtfully and thoroughly for us. We thank you again for making yourself available to parents, guardians, and our community in answering all of these questions. And we look forward to the second quarter round, and we'll see how that's going to be done. But parents and guardians out there, you can start thinking of more questions to ask right now. So thank you very much, and we're going to end the session, and we appreciate it. Mahalo.
Thank you.